Hey, what's up, Six Max Crushers? This is Cold Smile for Raise Your Edge and for the Online Cash Apprentice course. And I'm on the big screen for today's introduction into defending your big blind correctly, check raising flops, continuing on various turn cards after that. So a very difficult topic, a very wide topic. And what I'm not going to do in this video is to just show you random examples and just say, okay, you can do this and then you do this with like 50% frequency. This is not how it works. This will be a working video. So we're going to use our brain first because this is way more important for understanding how those situations work than just randomly looking at a solver solution and go from there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick you up right here. I'm going to throw you into a live coaching session I recorded a few days ago with my student Jamie. He is a 25 NL player right now. He's always hungry for knowledge. He's hungry for getting better. So the perfect student dream. And what we are going to do is we want to develop a solid check raising plan without using any kind of tools, without using a solver. So I put him in kind of a tough spot and he's really sweating and he has a difficult time figuring all that stuff out. And I want you to sweat that with him. So all the questions I ask him, please take them for yourself. Try to answer them for yourselves. Try to use your brain and your poker knowledge to this point to answer them. And yeah, I'm gonna throw you in there now and then I will pick you up after that and then we will talk things through. So enjoy and see you guys in a few minutes. The plan for today is to make this by hand. So we are going to analyze and look at our ranges by hand. And then after that, we're going to take a quick sneak peek into a solver, like what he wants to do or what it wants to do. And why that is, and if we can make rules from that, because everything a solver will say will be like way too complicated for us to pull off in game. So we need to have like a cool strategy that is executable in game. Okay, to the example, King 7-5. Gonna make this look a little bit more clean. We need to list like every kind of value hand we have now and then every kind of bluff we have, and then we basically have to see how we get those two ranges together that they work, right? So we're going to start with all value hands and you could just go ahead and
from the big blinds perspective.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean all two pairs, so King 5, King 7.
Very good. King 5, King 7. Yep. And value hands, yeah, sevens, fives.
5-7 even, 5-7 suited.
Yeah, for sure.
And kind of maybe most Ace-7.
Ace-7.
Maybe thin, and then like probably from what King 10 off downwards. So King X down to King 6, and then the suited combos of that as well.
Okay. So these are all the hands that you want to check raise the flop with and play for stacks.
Maybe not.
Okay. So I'm gonna delete the A7, but then you said something about the
range then, yeah.
Okay, what about King Queen maybe? King Jack, that kind of part?
Yeah.
Okay. So we add this one and then maybe put a question mark to it.
Yeah.
Does that sound good? Okay. That's basically everything that wants to or anything else.
Would we include like Ace-5 of spades?
I think we include that with in terms of bluffs and draws.
Right, okay.
Okay, so bluffs and draws. Okay, then so go ahead. There should be a little bit more. Okay, yeah, you don't need to have like any kind of like, don't have to say any kind of combo. I'm just gonna say 5x of spades maybe, like any kind of 5x with a flush draw.
6-4
okay.
would be all the combos are 6-4 suited.
For sure.
Maybe I'm thinking, would we use 9-8 as a bluff here?
Yep.
Maybe. I'm trying to think. I mean, suited Queen X spade draws possibly.
Okay, so all flush draws. I'm gonna put.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I suppose is that it for bluffs here, really?
Okay, we have maybe a little bit more, like in terms of gut shots and open enders.
Right. Yeah. 4-3.
Yeah, for sure.
6-8.
Yep.
And I guess that's it, is it? Or
9-6 missing.
right.
6-3, I guess.
Mhm.
And 8-4.
Right. Yeah.
And then we have it, I think. Okay. Anything else we want to raise for a bluff? Maybe something like a 5-6 maybe.
Maybe like 9s, 8s, or not.
Okay. 8-8, 9-9.
Some of the like.
What is the reason for raising that?
Well, we're not going to be able to realize much equity going forward with them. I suppose. If they have a spade as well, that's probably better.
Okay.
So like 9 to the spade seems like a good like check raise fold. And then no, we don't really have 10s forward, so I guess that would be, and then that's probably it.
Okay. What about a hand like Queen Jack of Hearts? So some backdoor straight, backdoor flush draw, and then double blocking the king.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's maybe the same with like ace. Oh, I guess ace 10 of hearts.
Ace Jack of Hearts, yeah. Ace 10 of Hearts, maybe. Yeah, that's good.
10 of hearts, yeah.
Okay. What about a hand like 5-6 suited?
Yep.
Sometimes.
Yeah, that's because we'll have the backdoor equity as well.
Yeah, and is it the same for 7x?
No, unless it's got another good blocker with it, I suppose.
Okay, so 7-6 maybe,
Yeah.
or 7-8.
7-8, 7-9.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, then maybe something that came to my mind when I was thinking about the situation, something like ace of spades, 10 of hearts or something for the future nut flush blocker, something like that. Maybe like
so using an ace of using a ace of spades as well with
to have bluffs on a spade run out, for example.
And the 10's quite nice to have as well, probably on other runouts.
Yeah, that could be true. Okay, so this is roughly how ranges look like, or how ranges could look like, or what we imagine them to look like. What we have to do now is we can't bluff everything of this like at 100% frequency, right?
Yeah.
Because we are kind of running out of value hands when we like bluff all of these, right? Okay, so while it's fine to have like lots and lots and lots of bluffs on the flop, and then we narrow it down going forward to the turn on different turn cards and going forward to the river, there has to be some order, some priority. So what do you think, or like what kind of hand groupings are raising more, and what kind of hand groupings are more like a rare check raise?
So probably starting off with all the open-enders and flush draws as our like best.
Okay, one is open-enders and flush draws. Okay, why is that?
Well, they have more equity than the other bluffs. Yeah, and then probably going down to kind of the suited 2-gappers, 1-gappers that.
Gutters.
Well, I guess maybe that's included in flush draw, but I think that the least used bluffs would be stuff like the Queen Jack and Ace 10 maybe. Okay,
the Queen Jack and Ace 10. So Queen Jack suited and the Ace 10 off we talked about?
Yeah, so yeah, maybe those are the least used.
Okay, what about the small pairs like the 5-6, the 7x, stuff like that?
They're probably high. They're probably higher than the Queen Jack and Ace 10.
Okay. So 2.5 I'm gonna put now because I already have the 3. Yeah. So 5, 6, 7, 6.
At least they have some equity already.
Yeah, and they have some blocker value too, right?
Yeah.
Because blocking like middle set or bottom set is kind of a nice thing to have.
Yeah, and they'll probably have better blocker value going forward as well in later streets, possibly if those straights come in.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so so far so good. Lots of these things are exactly happening like you said in theory as well, and lots of things we discussed are never happening. And there are good reasons why that is. But we will talk about the priority list first. When we think about check raising flops, it's or in general, when you think about a poker situation and talk about polarized ranges, it's always about the amount of nuts in both ranges. And nuts here is hands that want to play for stacks. That's what I would refer to the term of nuts. So every two pair is like playing for stacks for sure, and if he has ace king, he has his plan is to play for stacks as a cutoff player. So that's why I'm gonna go into so much detail when talking about nuts. And when we talk about, okay, how much do we want to check raise in general, it's how many nuts we can have. So we can have king 5 suited, king 7 suited, 5 7 suited, 5s and 7s. So we have no problem to find very strong hands on this board. So we have a huge amount of nuts. So that allows us to have like a kind of a big check raising range, or like a medium one at least. And then the priority list we made here, it's not about equity so much, but it's about nut making ability. So priority of check raising frequency, how often. Often these like two terms correlate a little bit, because the more equity you have, then the more nuts you can make. So this is basically goes hand in hand a little bit, but it's not the same term. It can be a little bit confusing going forward. So we have to clear that out for us now. How often is about nut making ability. So what happens is that the open-enders can make, when they make a straight, it's the nuts, right? So they are like pretty high frequency check raises. Same goes for the flush draws. Every flush draw or every flush is considered to be the nuts and want to play for stacks. So even the smaller flushes are considered to be nuts in our example. So these ones are completely right. Then the gutters is completely correct as well, because if the gutter hits his gut shot, it's the nuts as well. And then 5-6 and 7-6 stuff. There's not too many nuts that they can make on the turn directly.
We swap around the 2.5 and 3 because Queen Jack and Ace 10 can make the nuts sometimes, and 5-6 and 7-6 can rarely do it.
No, I wouldn't, because Queen Jack and Ace 10 on the turn at least, they never make the nuts. That's impossible to add in the 5-6, 7-6 can make trips or two pair, which we could consider playing for stacks. So the priority list is correct in that way. It's just to make clear that it's not about the equity we have, but it's about the nut making ability those hands have. And then it goes like for the flush draws a little bit as well. So the nut flush draws are raising a little bit more often than like a random medium flush draw with no backdoors at all. But that's just a small thing if you want to decide between flush draws as well. But we don't do that. We just put every flush draw to the check raising strategy. Okay, so now we will look. I mean, these are our predictions. Now we will look what of these hands are what is happening exactly, because we still have these 8-8, 9-9. We have still like all the gut shots to talk about, and what happens exactly when we ask Pio what he wants to do or what it wants to do. I always say he because I assume he's male. I don't know why, but yeah. Okay, so this is the tree. So for everyone who hasn't seen a solver yet or a solver used yet, don't worry. This looks complicated at first sight, but it's kind of easy and logical once you get behind what this thing is saying. So we leave it very, very simple and give a good overview how things are working out. Okay, so this is our flop right here, and these are the sizings we use. This is our range what we are defending, and in the big blind we don't have any donking ranges, so we just go for a high amount of checks and face a small c-bet in this case, and this is what our raising range looks like. Okay, so what do we see? Value hands. King 7.
Could you refine it by spades, and we can see what?
What do you mean by that?
Like if you click on the spades, see how if all flush draws are raising or not.
Oh yeah. All flush draws are raising. But there's a difference in pairs plus flush draw, because if we look at the Ace 6 suited, for example, the spades are always raising, everything else is folding, and hearts are sometimes raising. Not only because it has hearts for backdoors, but also because it has a 6, because it makes an open ender on the 4 and has a gut shot on the 3 and has an open ender on the 8, so that's pretty cool, and has an overcut to the king. So Ace 6 in spades always raising, same as hearts, and Ace 5 of spades, whoopsie doopsie, never raising.
Right, okay.
Could you have a good guess why that is?
Is that because we block some of the continues and therefore we don't get any value?
Close.
Okay.
It's not blocking the continues. But what if we think about what our opponent is folding to our check raise? What are the first hands that are snap folding to our check raise after he c-bets?
5x.
No, 5x are not folding. But close.
Okay. Ace highs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's ace highs. And if we have ace 5, we don't want him to fold ace highs because we want him to have an ace on the turn and then blast off. And we have...
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? So oftentimes when you are asking, okay, why is this hand raising or why is it not raising? A cool approach is to just look what your opponent is doing after you raised. And then you see like the ace highs, this is the blue color, are folding very, very often to the check raise. So these are the first hands that folding a lot, especially when we look at the offsuit part, right?
Yeah.
So when ace highs fold so often and we have like ace highs super dominate, we want to keep them in. And even if he doesn't have an ace high on the turn, he might start bluffing it, right? Or double barreling it a lot. So this hires the EV as well of just calling ace 5 suited. And another benefit is that on spade turns, you are having some flush draws in your calling range as well. So kind of protected by that.
I can already see where you're saying like some of the polarized stuff here. If we look at the bottom of our range, is raising kind of the bottom part, and then we look at king 7 as well as kind of taking care of the top bit.
Yeah, exactly. And why the bottom part is raising so much, so all the small cards, is that because that is where our advantage comes from when we are in the big blind, because we have all those hands and the cutoff doesn't. And when talking about who has the most nuts now on our example of king 7-5, like kings 5-7, stuff like that, that's one reason to determine how aggressively we want to check raise. And two is who has the most nuts across all the future runouts. Looks a little bit complicated because we can't imagine like every kind of run out, but the takeaway or the point is basically that all the low run outs are kind of better for us because we have more connectivity between all the low cards, and a run out like 5-7, 5 king 7 king queen is likely bad for us because we don't have like so many of the high cards, right?
Yep.
Okay, good. If we look at the nuts that are raising, king 7 always raising, 7-5 almost always raising, there's a little bit of a quote-unquote mistake in this sim because I allowed the in-position player to bet everything and with different sizings, and we are only looking to the small sizing, so this will go higher if I would simplify the strategy for the in-position player. Okay, so we have king 7 very often. King 5, actually not so often, but I would raise it in practice as well. At 100% frequency, same as 7-5 suited, just to have all these value hands available for barreling, and then you can check now what is more important, like the value range. We were pretty on point. I think everything is raising very frequently, except for king queen and king jack, which are never raising, and this has to do with
would this be because we want them to have worse kings and therefore get value from it? No, because they won't be folding kings on the flop. Yeah, never mind.
Exactly. This has more to do with like how tight ranges are. So we are facing a cutoff open here, and the cutoff is opening between 25 and 30% of hands. It depends on if it's more on the looser side or more on the tighter side. And the button is raising like around 50, so it's almost double the amount of hands. So on this texture, when we face a button open raise, we would frequently raise king queen because he has so many weaker hands that we can raise that for thin value, quote unquote. But the cutoff player is just too tight for that. So this is why king queen and king jack are not raising the flop. It's considered to be too thin, basically. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
great. Okay. So this is not a thing. But I mean, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 6. We can live with that, I think. 5x of spades, we already cleared that. It's not going to raise. And then we have our open enders, like the 6-4 and the 6-8, and we can see this is like the most frequent raises here.
Yeah.
Like our open enders are the most frequent raises because of the nut making ability. And after that, there comes every gut shot, the 6-3, the 9-6, the 9-8, kind of with a little bit less than the open enders, but still. So this is good as well.
And I'm guessing the spade combos of those are just solid 100% raising.
Yeah, 100% raising. Yeah, for sure. Because they have so much nut making ability. Okay, so gut shots we have, because it's the same for every gut shot. 4-3, same frequency. 8-4 we don't have pre-flop, so this is not a thing, but we might sometimes. If we have it, I think it would be in there. 8-8, 9-9 with a spade. This is not going to happen.
On the spades, I mean, is it raising at all with spades?
No, nothing. Gonna look. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is not going to happen. And Queen Jack, here you fall into my trap, because these hands we can't have because we don't have them pre-flop, right?
Well, I did think that, but I didn't say it.
Ah, okay. Why didn't you? Okay, I'm always doing this, like, oh, what about the Queen Jack of hearts?
I think I'm 3-betting too wide from the big blind, so I'm like, oh, maybe I shouldn't. I should have Queen Jack, but
I actually think
they said ace of hearts. I was like, well, do we actually have ace of hearts? Really?
yeah. Not often enough. Not often enough. So
yeah.
5-6 also very interesting.
And even though it's included in this range, it isn't even raising anyway.
yeah. It is. Yeah, for sure. So 5-6 a little bit. 5-4 a little bit. How about 7-6? Yeah, some smaller frequency. So we actually nailed like the priority list pretty good here. It's raising, but it's kind of rarely raising. So maybe you could say something like 25%. If you don't want to randomize it, just do like one suit. So pick a suit. For example, you pick hearts for your aggressive suit, and every time you have like 5-6 of hearts, you're gonna raise. And if you have like the other suits, you're just not gonna do it.
Yeah. Obviously, change that per session.
Yeah. You don't really have to, but yeah. The point is,
a good habit there.
Yeah, but the point is, 5-6 and 6-7 are sometimes raising, and they are only barreling off when they turn equity. So this is why this is like a low frequency raise, because they can't continue on every turn card, which would be different for our open enders, which can basically continue always. And then we have Queen Jack and Ace on less often. Okay, this is going to go into the trash. But yeah, very good. Other than that, this was very, very close to... and the Ace of Spades, 10 of Hearts is never raising as well. So this was like my example, my guess. This is never happening. Maybe a super little bit.
Not that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit.
It's insignificant. It's like 20%.
Yeah,
it's the same amount as 6-5, and we included that.
Yeah. So a little bit sometimes you could maybe guess it. I'm gonna put it back.
Okay.
I'm gonna put it back. Oh. Okay, cool. So that was the easy part. So now we know what kind of range we want to play, or how our range looks like. Now we have to continue on different turn cards. And we have to figure out what that turn card does for both ranges, and how our approach then looks like. And now we go back to what was the initial question: when do we want to polarize, and why we want to do that? So the first example is the beautiful 4 of diamonds comes on the turn after we check raised.
Yep.
And you are the one to predict what's happening. So polarizing or not?
I suppose it's a pretty good card for. It's probably one of our best cards, is it not?
Good card for.
So probably polarizing again. I mean, it completes a lot of our range, and we even now, we have more nuts now, I guess. So yeah, I'd say we would probably be polarizing on that turn.
On what kind of sizings would you like to use?
Probably, I want to say 60, 70%, 80%, like big-ish.
Okay, wait. 60, 70, 80 big-ish, it doesn't say anything. So you have to be more precise with that.
Well, I was deciding between that sizing at 80% or overbetting. Maybe overbetting would be better, but would it be better because wouldn't we be we're still not getting a king to fold though.
So I'm gonna say big betting, no small betting. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, no small betting.
Okay, no small betting.
I'm torn between that maybe because of pot control, but I'm gonna go with big betting.
Okay. So no small betting. What about checks?
I would think we're not checking the turn. A lot. We're not doing it at all.
Okay, no checks. And big betting can be anything between 60 and 150.
Yeah.
Okay. Gonna put that. Okay. That's pretty good. That's pretty accurate too. So there's a 3-step model that you can use now for evaluating turn cards. And you already like touched it a little bit because you said we have more nuts than before. And that is super important. So the first one is
it seems like a great card for our range. Like it improves all the kind of middling draws hands in our range.
Yeah, exactly. I would agree 100%. So what about our flop nuts, like the King 7, King 5, 7-5 suited? Are they still the nuts? Do they still want to play for stacks?
Yes.
Yes.
Probably because the cutoff doesn't have any straights on the turn.
Are still nuts?
Like the cutoff still comes to the turn with ace king, and we can still stack that probably.
Okay, that's number one. Number two is we have to ask: do we make any kind of new nuts? And yeah.
Yes, like 6-8. And is that it? 6-3.
6-3, very good. And
some 2 pairs now, so
yes.
5
4s.
7-4, and
that's it.
Yep, that's it. Would we want to be playing for stacks with 5-4 and 7-4? I mean,
yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Because I mean, he still has like the cutoff still has very strong king X that will probably not, will be happy to play for stacks.
Yeah. Because I mean they need to, right? If he folds like everything on the turn to a second barrel, then he gets a problem.
Folding ace king on that turn.
No, he can't. Like at least not in theory. And the last point is: does the cutoff player, so our opponent, make any new nuts on the 4 of diamonds here?
I mean, not really. No. I mean, I was thinking 4s, but I mean, you're not calling a raise on the flop with 4s, so
nope.
No.
So this is the 3 steps when we want to argue about how good, how bad is that turn card and what our strategy looks like. And if 1, 2, 3 is true, so our flop nuts are still nuts. 2, we make new nuts with all of our hands that we mentioned. And 3, our opponent doesn't add any new nuts to his range. Then that means this is the gas pedal.
Right,
so if we look at the 4 of diamonds, this is what our strategy looks like.
Right, yeah.
So there's no checking, that's correct, like no checks at all. There's no small betting. This is the 33% sizing, this is 75, and this is 150, so this is our overbet. So I would maybe simplify and only have the 75% sizing, because it gets kind of hard to mix all those hands into 2 different sizings.
Does it differentiate at all between what type of hands it uses for an overbet and what type of hands it uses for a big bet? Like I'm looking at, like,
6-3 is mixing mixing the nuts kind of, then mixing in 5-3, and then basically there's no real guideline to figure out exactly what kind of hands you wanna.
It's about
the takeaway is just like put the gas pedal to the floor, because this card is so good for your range as it improves so much. So gas pedal to the floor, no checking, no blocking, and by blocking I mean Bet size.
betting.
Yeah, bet sizing.
Kind of pot controlling betting.
Yeah.
None of that. But I was thinking that's like, why would we want a pot control? Why do we want a small bet on a card that like all we're doing is letting like we're just making the cutoff have a good time.
Exactly.
Just helping him out by giving him like a nice price to call and like a nice.
Yeah. So, okay. So even if we look at this output, so this is like all of our hands and what they want to do, like everything wants to fire. Even if we like accidentally raise the hand like queen jack off on the flop, like because our cat stumbled across the keyboard or something, then we could bluff this now on the turn. This is how good this card is.
It's not even. It's like barely losing, isn't it? It's like
yeah. And you have to like realize how good this card is, and you can only do that when you can when you know what your range looks like. And this is why we preach the 3-bet only approach, and that's why we preach keeping things simple so much. It's because when you know what your range looks like, you can make these guesses and these assumptions even if you don't know exactly what's happening. This is why you nailed that, or like you had a good guess, or like getting so close to reality, because we did all the work before and you know exactly how ranges look like. And even if you didn't know or don't know any of these complicated solver stuff, you could have a good prediction for this. And this is what you can always do when you are in-game and have no tools available. When you know how things work, or kind of how things look like between the ranges, etc., you can always have a good guess, which will always be kind of okay or working out okay. And this is where your edge will come from, because your opponent likely doesn't know as good as you do. Okay.
Can I just cut the EV of the big bet and the over bet and the big bet? Is it still very close? So even if you do mix those a bit more, the EVs are quite close. Like, it's not like if you use big betting on it when it doesn't recommend that.
Okay, say that again. What exactly you want to know? Like the difference between
like, for example, if you look at like 6-3 is big betting.
Okay.
Yeah, it's over betting.
Yeah.
And like 6-4 is big betting.
Yeah, barely difference. Yeah,
it's barely different. So it's
barely difference. Yeah. The only thing you'd never want to do is betting small. This is like huge EV loss. But between the two sizing is very, very close.
I mean, there it's 2/10. Yeah, it's like 8/10 of a.
Yeah, exactly. So what we're talking about is the numbers between, if we take the example of 6-3 of diamonds and we check like bet 39 and bet 20, they are the 45 numbers attached to that, and the first one is 45-3-1 and the number one is 45-2-8. So the EV, or the value of the very big sizing and the only big sizing, is basically the same. So it's not a huge difference which one you want to use in this case, and that's why we want to make things simple and then only use the one that comes up most frequently, which is the 75, and only use that on the turn. So this is basically what we were talking about. Yeah, good question. Okay, very good. So the first rule is, if 1, 2, 3 is true, ... this happens. Very nice. Okay, next example gets a little bit more tricky. We are hiring the skill question here. The turn is the Queen of Diamonds.
Yep.
Okay. What would be your prediction?
Well, if we've big bet the turn and the cutoff has continued, I feel like this is a pretty bad card. The flush misses, which is positive, but he also now has more nuts than we do on that river. So he now has king, queen, queens.
So you want to use the 3-step model here? That would be maybe a cool idea.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, try it. So one.
I mean, we still have straights. We still have 2 pairs, which I mean.
Okay, wait. The turn is the Queen of Diamonds. What kind of straight do we?
Sorry, excuse me. I thought you were talking about the river.
No. It's the Queen of Diamonds on the turn.
Turn is the Queen of Diamonds.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it seems like a pretty bad card for us then.
Yeah.
He has more nuts now. We have less nuts. We still have king 7 and 7-5, but they maybe don't want to play for stacks anymore.
Okay, so our flop nuts don't want to play for stacks anymore. Is that correct?
some of it does still. I think King 7 probably still does. Maybe, well, maybe not. And the sets still do.
Yeah.
But maybe some of our lower 2 pairs are a little bit more worried now on the turn. I feel like we're gonna have a lot more checking on the turn. Just due to the fact that that card benefits their range. Also, we end up with a lot of flush draws that have again missed on the turn, which, you know, yeah, it's they make more nuts, we don't.
Yeah, sounds good. So the second is, do we add any new nuts on the queen?
We have King Queen off.
Do we?
Well, no. Are we raising King Queen on the flop? No, we're not.
Let's check again.
We're not really.
So bet 2. What? Okay, check. Bet 2.
Raise, yeah.
Oh yeah, there we go. So King Queen we don't really have. I mean, we simplified it away.
Yeah.
So
we I mean, the answer is no. We don't have any more nuts on the turn.
Okay. We don't add any new nuts on that
So
turn.
if we looked at the imposition range, I imagine what they're continuing with is going to improve a lot on the turn.
Yeah. So the cutoff player adds new nuts.
Yeah.
Which would they be?
King, Queen, Queens. If Queen's continuing on the flop, which I think they are.
Yeah, they are.
I mean, that's probably it for the new nuts.
Yeah. So this is kind of the opposite we had before, right? So our flop nuts are not like super happy now. At least some of that. I mean, our sets are still like kind of want to play for stacks. But King 7, King 5, 7, 5 are kind of like, don't know really, or not really sure. And the important part is we don't any.
We're getting into the stage with those kind of hands that we're only being called by better hands now if we play for stacks.
That could be, or we could be right on the edge, on the threshold. So this is kind of the prediction we have, right?
Yeah.
But you didn't say anything about sizings and how we want to continue.
Oh, okay. So I feel like we have more checks, and maybe we small bet more. So checks and small bets, no big betting would be my prediction.
Okay, small bets more, no big betting.
Yeah.
That's a very viable prediction. No big betting at all. Okay. Small bets more, no big. So polarization is clearly no, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So what happens now on the queen? You were correct in your 1, 2, 3. So our flop nuts are not always want to play for stacks. We don't add any new nuts. That's 100% true.
Yep.
And the cutoff adds new nuts. So we have to be very, very careful now. So what happens now is that we still want to polarize, but we don't want to do it as often. So we have to basically put on the handbrakes now.
Right, okay.
So this is what happens on the queen. We can see that the King 7 is now checking half the time. So that means not that we are like putting out a clock or a randomizer and then checking this half the time. This is just for, okay, my King 7 is now being careful, my King 5 is very careful, and my 7-5 is really, really careful. 7s, they don't, and 5s, they don't really, they don't have a strong opinion on that queen because they are still the nuts and can play for stacks.
Yeah.
The 7s is checking so much basically to protect it a little bit more because we have so many give ups. If you look at the gut shots, especially 9-8, 9-6, 6-3, there's no bluffing at all. 4-3, they are all check folding now. They are goodbye, I'm out of here. Even our strongest draws like 8-6 suited and 6-4 suited, which are our open enders, are now not bluffing as much anymore. They're like, oh man, okay, I don't want to bluff this all the time. Our flush draws are now checking, like the A6 of spades is checking now, for example. So this is basically a very, very passive reaction to one of the worst cards there could possibly be. So we have to be very, very careful. And what happens now is that we want to bluff with our absolute best bluffs because 8-6 and 6-4 are still bluffing. But then we want to proceed very, very careful. So our gut shots are now giving up. Our pairs, like 4-5, and 7-5 and 7-6 where we have it are now like don't really want to bluff this card too often. They only have like the bottom set blocker or like the 2-pair blocker now, and that's basically all there is to it. There's no small betting though. There's no blocking on that card.
Yeah, I noticed that.
There's lots of checking, though 70% checking. And when we bet like for 75%, but only our best draws and best value hands. So everything else goes into the check. So
interesting to see it's the ace 3 and ace deuce and ace 4. Is that just of spades?
yeah, that's just spades.
Okay,
Yeah,
right.
that's just the spades. And even ace 4 does a little bit less now. So if 1, 2, 3 is true, handbrake scenario we call it. No overbetting, no small betting, small polarized range of best bluffs and best value hands. So the important thing is here, you have to think about this a little bit more, at least when you are in game. It's not like, easy peasy, I know if 1, 2, 3 is true, I'm going to do that. You have to be very precise in what counts as nuts in your range.
Right, yeah.
So, precise.
And also just recognizing that this is a bad card.
Yeah, that's the first step for sure. What counts as nuts? So 7-5 definitely want to play for stacks now, but king 5, 7-5 not anymore, and even king 7 not anymore so much. So this is they are rather strong hands. I put that here. So king 5, king 7 not so much, and are rather strong hands instead of flop nuts, I would say. So what counts as nuts? And if you have that, you realize you have way less nuts now, so you can bluff less, so to speak. So your weakest bluffs need to give up now, and your strongest bluff can still play to have a counterpart to your value hands.
Yeah.
Okay? Okay. I'm gonna make this a little bit more nicely, and then we will head over to the third example, which is maybe the most interesting one, and this is when the flush hits the turn.
Right.
So we have to talk about that as well. So the turn is the 2 of spades in this case.
Yeah.
And as we are used to, we have our 3-step model. You can start with that, or you can have a prediction like on the fly, what kind of sizings we want to use. Just go ahead and try your best.
I mean, I think because we solidly raise all the spades on the flop, we probably have more flushes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, our nuts are now pretty much not nuts anymore. So even our best nut, I mean, 7s and 5s are still probably okay with it because they have outs. Well, I mean, they're probably our best nuts now. King 7, 7, 5 are probably less happy with it, and therefore I wouldn't probably want to play with stacks with anymore. I think I'm really not sure about the sizing on the turn when the flush comes in. I mean maybe kind of betting middle again, and maybe mixing between checks.
Middle? Okay, sure. That's a new sizing. What the sizing is middle?
Sorry, I mean so kind of I mean like 70%, not overbetting.
Oh, okay. So 70% sizing.
Maybe this turn is kind of one that we want to be polarized on now, where we do have flushes and air. Maybe this is the one. I'm not sure.
Flushes and air. Okay. 75% sizing. So you said flop nuts are not nuts anymore. That is true, I think. 2. Do we make new nuts on the turn?
Yes.
Yes, we.
And I would say probably more than in position than the cutoff.
Yeah, and as we said in the beginning, all flushes are count as nuts, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. All flushes. Okay. And does the cutoff make any new nuts on the turn?
Yes, you also have some flushes, some nut flushes, but I think less flushes than we have. So we probably, yes, but maybe not as much as we do. But then also, his nuts are less good now as well. So kings are not as happy, and ace king. So yeah, I mean he has more precarious nuts.
Okay. Lots of things good. Some things are not exactly
yeah.
how we want to do it. But this one is like a pretty cool one, or a pretty important one, or a pretty important example, because this one is usable for every scenario. And what happens on the 2 is basically what you already predicted is happening on the queen. So here is no big betting at all on the 2. So there's only the small sizing, we see it here for 33%, no 75 at all, no overbetting, and checks.
Yeah.
So
we're polarizing then,
we're not. So
right, okay.
because the small sizing is not really polarized, right? Polarizing would be if we use 75 and checks, for example, or 75 and 150 and checks, or something like that.
Right, yeah.
If we only have small betting, that basically says, okay, I want to bet all my hands now, or like all my flop raises.
Yeah, sorry, I read that wrong,
Yeah. Okay, yeah, but good question. There are no stupid questions at all. But what I meant is, in general, when the flush hits the turn on a non-paired board, there's no big betting at all in any kind of scenario. So if you have a 3-bet pot, there's no big betting. If you have a single raise pot, there's no big betting. I mean, there's no huge betting. If you have a single raise pot in position, like big blind versus button, for example, you are the button player, c-bet the flop. Now face their turn, you can't overbet, or you don't want to. Because if you polarize on the flush card too hard, you don't have effective bluffs for the river. So this means I'm going to start again with the 3-step model. The flop nuts are not nuts anymore, but still can value bet, right? You kind of was figuring that out while talking and while thinking about it. Like, we want to bet our king 7 and king 5 and get value from a hand like king jack, king queen with a spade, ace king, maybe some float hands like ace queen off with a spade that now wants to see a river. So these are still value bets, but we can't bet them big, right? Because the bigger we go, the more we allow the in-position player to fold hands or start folding strong hands. And if we go very, very big, we come to the point that he's only continuing with flushes or with sets and flushes. And that means that we can't really bluff effectively if we use that big sizing, right? Because if we think about our 8-6 suited, we take that as an example. 8-6 you want to 100% bet this turn with a small sizing. So you want to bet small to keep all his hands in, and you want to have an effective bluff on the river as well. Because if you go too big with your 8-6 and you basically only play against flushes, A, you can't value bet your straight when you make it, and you want to do that, and B, you can't bluff any kind of blanks because you will always get called with your 8 high.
Yeah, so I guess if we bet big, we kind of remove any of the positives of choosing that as a bluff.
Yes, exactly. And you have like so many hands that want to value bet, but they don't want to play for stacks, so they kind of have to find something in between that works. So they can't really fire off big, but they can't check, so they have to find something in between. And the solution is here to have a sizing decrease, to go for a small sizing, to be able to bluff over multiple streets effectively, and to value bet thinly over multiple streets effectively. Okay, so, if 1 to 3 is true, so both players add new nuts in terms of flushes. I think I looked it up, or like I calculated that once. It's actually the kind of the same amount of flushes, because we have an advantage as the big blind player with all the low flushes that we can have, and he has the advantage on the ace king suited, ace queen suited, ace jack suited thing that are hands that we can't have. So that evens out. That evens out. Or it's at least like it's maybe 1 or 2 combos difference, so you can't really say who has like more nuts there. I think it's roughly the same amount. So if 1 of 3 is true, especially on a flush card, there's a sizing decrease. And that means no big bets at all, no overbetting, only blocking. Oh. Okay, and this is basically the 3 different scenarios that can come up when you check raise a flop. So the flush
Yeah.
gets there, or the card is very good for us, or the card is very, very bad for us. And then we basically have a good plan what to do on any of these scenarios. So on the 4 of diamonds, we know exactly, okay, now I can put the gas pedal to the floor and the cutoff can't really do anything about it. The turn, we know, oh man, I need to be careful here. I need to be very precise what counts as nuts in my range and what hands I want to play for stacks, and then add the right amount of bluffs to it, which is a little bit difficult, but we had a good guess or a good guideline to basically that it's the same range, but the weakest ones are giving up, all our gut shots are giving up, and the open-enders are still going through or following through. And then we have the exotic scenario of the flush hitting the turn, that we only have small sizings and no big betting at all, because we want to be able to value bet all our hands that we raise the flop with and then bluff effectively. Okay. Any questions to that or to that kind of scenarios?
No, I think that's interesting. I'm interested what our range does on pairing turns, but
We can look that up.
yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I guess it's different depending on what the card is that pairs, but my initial thought would be that on a lot of paired turns we would be doing well because maybe some of our 2 pairs would have improved, or we would have picked up more 2 pairs if we big bet flop.
That's basically the benefit, that we raise 4-5 and 7-6 on the flop too, right? And we make a lot of boats.
We have really good coverage on a pairing turn, and if it's a high pairing turn, it's pretty easy to probably get away from, I imagine.
So I haven't prepared anything for that, but we can maybe have a good prediction and then look it up. Maybe we can freestyle a bit now. So pairing turn, what kind of turn we want to look at? You choose one.
Let's go. I mean, I'm trying to think of one that's like a good, maybe like the 9 of diamonds. Would that? No, that's not a pairing turn. Sorry. The 7 of diamonds.
Okay, 7 of diamonds. Yeah. Okay, what's the prediction?
Would we be playing it similar to a flush maybe, because it's another really good card for us and a good card for our range that we would want to. Actually, no, we probably would be betting big then. So yeah, I think we'd probably be wanting to bet pretty big on that turn because it is so good for our range.
Okay, so we have big bets.
Yeah. We make way more nuts on that turn.
Okay,
because we have more 7x. We have more boats. He only has, well, I guess he has kings or.
Yeah, and he doesn't have 7-5, right?
No. It does have 5s though.
Yeah, he does have 5.
But maybe, yeah, it does have 5s.
Oh, I skipped one here. So our flop nuts, like on the 7, I think everything which is not exactly king 5, I think, still wants to play for stacks, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so 1 flop nuts are still nuts.
But would that also be the same for in position, because on the 7 pairing turn it's less likely have a 7, therefore they might be more happy with their ace kings.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it removes a lot of accept is like a super difficult word. Accept. Yeah. That's correct, right? Yeah, okay.
I think so.
Except for king 5 suited. Yeah, we add new nuts with our 7x and 5x. Does the cutoff add any newer nuts on the 7 of diamonds?
No.
I mean, king 7 suited he will still have, I think. Pocket 5s.
There aren't any new nuts. I mean, the 5s are still the nuts.
Yeah. Do you think a 7? Do we know if a 7 folds to our race? We don't, no?
I mean, does a7 factor into the imposition flop nuts now?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
So it picks up a7.
Yeah, a7. Or we just say some 7x that he c-bets the flop with.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, kinda, right? Okay, so if both players add some new nuts, and our bluffs get a little bit less valuable if we polarize too hard. So I still want to bluff my 8-6 here on the 7 of diamonds, especially if I have something like 8-6 of hearts that I block 7-6 suited twice and 8-7 twice, if that makes sense. So he can't really have 6-7 suited and 8-7 suited. I still want to polarize. So I don't think that we have too much of a small sizing. It could be a mix of blocking and big bets, but I think that's too complicated to pull off. So I would stay away from that even if it happens. So I think my prediction would be to have big bets and checks too, and I don't think there's much small betting on the 7. But we will see now. I'm curious. I don't know myself. So so 7 of diamonds. You predicted big bets and checks as well, right? Yeah, I think so too. And then in terms of frequency, what do we think about frequencies? If we talk about like all our gut shots.
Yeah, maybe less so. I really don't know. I mean.
Yeah, I think it's less. I think it's less because it's
less so.
because the nut making ability we talked earlier about is like a little bit less now too. Because if we hit our gut shots, we can still lose, right, to a board, which can't really happen if the board is not paired. And another thing I think this could be relevant for the 7 of diamonds is that you want to have some kind of 7-6 suited, 8-7 suited blockers that are still going very polarized. That could be a thing. Okay, let's see. Oh, we nailed it. No small betting, no over betting, only the big sizing, and that pretty frequently too. So we check 58% of the time, so we are not going super aggressive, and we predicted that we have some checks with our weakest part. Yeah, the gut shots are now less barreling unless they have pretty good equity or blockers. Our 7x now obviously are going for stacks. And 6-4 suited.
It's interesting to know there is no trapping. I mean, that makes sense because what would you be trapping against?
Yeah, exactly. What would you be trapping against?
Like we're betting 7's pure because why would we try and trap like what we're trying to trap against?
And this is what
one combo of kings. Like,
and I could see that people are doing wrong actually. That they if they raise the flop with king 7, they're now checking the turn, just to trap and for no reason.
You're not trapping against anything.
Yeah. So this is kind of similar to the queen of diamonds, but just that we have more value hands now that still want to play for stacks, and we still can bluff with our best draws like the small nut flush draws, the 6-4, the 8-6 is barreling through even without any kind of blockers. I thought that blockers would have an impact here, that the 8-6 of hearts is very, very valuable here because of the blocker effect of the 8-7 suited, 6-7 suited. But 8-6 of diamonds, I mean if we compare EVs, like 8-6 of diamonds is like half the EV for the big sizing. I know it's for the overbet sizing, so it's kind of the same actually. That's interesting. Okay, but anyway, we made a good prediction, and this is exactly how it works.
Supposing that we bet big in the imposition range, a lot of it is just pure folding now.
Yeah, a lot of it is just pure folding, and there's no raising at all, I would predict. It's a little 7%, basically only A7 suited. I mean, we predicted there that he has like the A7 and then wants to fast bet. I kind of.
5 and Ace5, interesting.
Blockers. Yeah.
I mean, kings they just call it. Oh, well, no, that's because it's nuts. But like,
basically the result is if you want to raise A7 now in his shoes, you need to have bluffs for that, and then basically it chooses what are the best bluffs in terms of blocker value. But nobody really does that, and this is not happening in practice ever. So all that theory work is good to understand and good to like get behind why that is. I would never try to play a strategy like this, like our first strategy, like frequency wise. I would never try that, but I would make good rules for it. So I know that my open enders are raising more than my gut shots. So my gut shots already raise only a little bit. Same for my bottom pairs with some backdoor options. And then when I know like how my range looks like, it gets like not easy to maneuver, but it gets way easier than before because you can have a very good guess on almost any kind of turn card and be correct with that. We basically guessed this one out of on the fly right now with the 7 of diamonds. It worked out pretty well without us exactly knowing what's going on, right? Okay. The good thing is that it looks complicated, but it's also very logical when you look at it, right? I mean, it makes to me it makes like complete sense that it's exactly the way it is now, and it shows up. Okay.
Yeah, and I think you can prove that by, as you said, with the last one we did with the 7 of diamonds, that if you just follow the logical approach, you can then start looking at, we're not going to get the exact frequencies right, but you're going to get a pretty good rule.
Yeah, exactly. And then again, even if you don't get it 100% right, it will still be a super strong strategy. And
the
it will
EVs
give.
are not that far away.
No, it's not at all.
There's no like
massive losing mistake as long as you're not like checking.
And then imagine having the confidence in game to exactly know, on the 7, I know exactly what I want to do now. There's no guessing, there's no worrying anymore. I know exactly how ranges look like and I want to do. And this confidence will translate over into your win rate as well, if you have that. So this is always how I would work with the solver as well. I would never try to copy and paste what he's doing or what it is doing. I would always try to look for patterns, for rules, what is always happening, what is never happening. So what are my 100% checks, what are my 100% bets, and then go from there and then make it pretty easy. Phew, man, that was a tough one, right? I'm on the small screen again to leave room for some additional content, additional examples. Just really quick, another 10 minutes or something, going briefly over some other flop textures, because we just had one in this and that really in depth, and I'm gonna share some examples of different flop textures and what's happening there. Just really small, just to give an idea how it works on different textures. And what I prepared is 3 examples. 6-6-4 with a flush draw, Ace-King 5 with a flush draw, and 7-8-9 without a flush draw. They're all like super different from each other and gives, I think, a good example. And what we haven't really talked about in this video, I figured, was about sizing. So how big do we actually check raise after we defend our big blind? So versus a small bet, and I'm talking 33% range bet, I'm usually going a little bit bigger, so around 5x, but I think 4x or something in between those numbers is fine too. I wouldn't really go smaller, because that would allow your opponent to call a lot of hands that you want to fold out sometimes. So this sizing is good. Or if you have buttons on your above your bet size thingy, I will call it right now, you can use the 75% button. This will work as well. And according to sizing, if your opponent sees it's bigger, so maybe 3/4 spot, you just raise a little bit smaller, so roughly around 3.5 to 4x. And of course, less often, because we face a polarized range, so more strong hands, less air hands, so we want to check raise a little bit less often. Okay, let's get into this and have a brief look, and maybe you can have a good guess right now which one of these 3 boards is the one we check raise the most on, we are being most aggressive on, and which one is the one we are least aggressive on. I think least aggressive we can all agree on, but most aggressive I think is kind of difficult and might be a surprise. We are going to start with 6-6-4. And I prepared a solver solution for that, just to have a quick look in how things work, because if we want to do it by hand right now, this will take another hour and so on, so you get the point, right? So we check, obviously, our player pool will bet full range. This is what I did in the solver, so that I bet all of the hands, and this is our check raising strategy. So we are check raising a whopping 25.6%, which is massive. This is a lot. So this means we have an advantage in 6x, and we also have an advantage in all the low cards, so all the connectivity between the 6 and the 4. We have hands like 5-3, 5-2, stuff like that, 6-3, 6-4. So this is why the frequency is so high. And the button player in this example, he is the open raiser. He doesn't have those hands because he's just not open raising them. So this is why we get to get really, really aggressive. Every 6x is raising almost 100% of the time, as you can see here. There's no slow playing at all. However, some hands like the 8-6, like our lower 6x, are sometimes slow playing to have some 6x into your calling range. But I think we can simplify to just raise all of our 6x 100% of the time and don't worry too much about our calling range. And then in terms of bluffs, obviously, if you look at a hand like King 5, which can have a lot of backdoor equity on a 3, on a 7, this will raise pretty often. Same goes for Queen 5, Jack 5, 10 5, folds out better hands, has some decent equity, some decent backdoor equity, and the same goes for the 3x that turns a lot of gut shots, open-enders as well, and even some 2x like the King Deuce of Spades with the backdoor flush draw is raising here. So this is how aggressive we can be. And the interesting part is that it's not only like those hands, it's also on the other side. When we switch to the offsuit hands, a hand like Queen 10 offsuit with a club is raising sometimes. That's pretty impressive, right? This is like very, very aggressive. And this is how aggressive you can be when someone betting like small with their entire range on a board. They should be a little bit more careful about, right? So yeah, that gives you a brief a brief example or a brief so yeah, this gives you a brief example of how things work and how aggressive we can actually be on those low paired boards. So yeah, go ahead, be super aggressive, and about the turn continues, you should be able to find that out yourself when you have watched the video, right? Okay, so this is 664, super aggressive board for us. We're gonna jump right into the next one, which is Ace King 5, and this looks a little bit different, I'm gonna tell you that much. So Ace King 5 right here. We are checking, obviously there's no donk betting at all. So this is what a solver would say. So we have 60% checks, we have the small sizing, not really used, we have the big sizing, not really used, and we have an overbet sizing for the button player, heavily used. What the hell is happening here? So the thing is, on Ace King 5 flush draw, when we think about what we are defending in the big blind and have an image in our head about how our range looks like, the only nuts we can have, or the really good hand the big blind player can have, is pocket fives, right? And then we have, no, we don't have that, and that's about it, right? We don't even have ace 5 suited because we're gonna 3-bet that pre. Ace king, we're gonna 3-bet pre, same for kings and aces. And even like our Broadways, huge draws like queen jack suited, we don't have these because we're gonna 3-bet that pre. So what happens on this texture is that we are basically having a problem right away when this flop comes down. And this is why a solver, I'm gonna pronounce that with some exaggeration, wants to use a 150% overbet sizing only on the spot texture. Will never happen in reality. Will happen maybe when you reach like very high stakes. People are doing that quite a lot, and it's good to see that because people are working on their game and put you in tough spots. But usually what people are going to do is they bet small with their entire range, and this is always fine. And if you are wondering now, should I bet 150% pot no? No, you don't. Why is that? Because the small sizing will be equally good because people won't know that you are supposed to bet big. So betting small is good, everyone will do that, and I would advise you to do that too. So we are going to look into that, what happens when our opponent bets small. Ooh, okay, so no 30% raising, only 9.7, a little bit higher than I expected. Okay, let's see what hands are check raising a lot. Pocket fives, makes sense, the only nuts we can have. Then some king 5 suited, but not really a lot. Some ace jack offsuit, so a tiny thin value raise, and then we have ace 5 off, yeah, right, makes sense. And as bluffs, okay, this is like the highest frequency bluffs, so a little bit of a gut shot, 4-3 4 deuce, and then some 5x with backdoor potential is going to raise, and all the other bluffs like some king 3, queen jack, queen 10, just a little bit, a tiny bit with a club, yeah, and only with a club. Why is jack 10 suited in here? This is a mistake. This hand is never in here. Okay, good to know, good to know. Some misclicking, very professional, but you get the point, right? Jack 10 obviously never in there. But the important thing, what we want to take away from this is, all the bluffs are basically non-existing, and the value hands are a very small portion as well. So on this board, we don't want to worry about having a large check raising strategy and continuing them on different turn cards. I would personally simplify all the check raising away. That means I'm going to do just no check raising and have a little bit of a stronger calling range, and try to have a better idea of I want to construct my calling range. So on ace king 5, a pretty exotic example, I would just not do any kind of check raising whatsoever for that reason. Okay, interesting. That's kind of the opposite to 665. Now 7, 8, 9 rainbow, maybe the most interesting one, at least for me, I think. So what's your guess? Like check raising more than 664, more than ace king 5? I think more than ace king 5, but more than 664. Let's have a look. Okay, we are not going to do any donk betting, so we check, and then he bets. Okay, we have both options here. So as the in position player, you can bet small and big. I think both works kind of well in this scenario. We're gonna have a look what happens against the small bet, because I think this is what happens most frequently, and then we will have a look at the big sizing after. Okay, 13%. That's actually not that much. Okay, that's interesting, because I thought it was like way more aggressive. But one thing is, there's no flush draw, so there are not that many draws to charge. There are not that many big equity shifts on turn cards. And this check raising strategy focuses on blockers. So your Jack X blocking Jack 10 is like a high frequency check raise, especially when you have a backdoor flush draw, and not really when you don't have. So your Jack X, especially when you have Jack 6, which also blocks 6-5, is a very good bluff check raise. So you can still be aggressive on 9-8-7, but not as much as we thought, right? I thought this would go through the roof because we have all the connectivity, all the low cards, and even offsuit, and the button don't have that. But it's actually not that much. So our bluffs are likely blockers, Jack X, some 6X right here. Not so much of the two pairs, I think. 8-7, let's have a look. Okay, we are always calling 8-7 if we don't 3-bet that pre. And we don't have those offsuit versions even against the button. So this could be a mistake that maybe you made as well as me, imagining that we have some 8-9 off stuff in our defending range, which we actually have not. Okay, so we know we are going to summarize it. 6-6-4, very aggressive. We have a huge advantage, especially when it comes to connectivity, and especially when it comes to all the possible turn and river cards. As long as they are low cards, they are pretty good for us, and then they are making us a lot of new nuts. Ace King 5, there are not many turn cards that can change a lot of things, so there are not as many runouts that will be good for the big blind player. So we check raise way less in theory, and I would check raise 0 in practice. And 9-8-7, kind of a lockdown board, so pretty passively played as well. Not as crazy check raising as we thought. Not even our sets are check raising 100% of the time, which is super surprising, I think. I am definitely over check raising this board then. So with the presence of a straight, so that both players can have the nuts, usually boards are getting played a little bit more passively. The same goes for like 5, 6, 9, and it's all diamonds, for example, so a monotone board. This gets played super passively as well. There's no big betting at all. There's not much check raising, not much barreling. So this is kind of similar to that. So yeah, we have these 3.5, 4 examples, and the important takeaway is to figure out exactly where is your advantage, and that makes up for this will result in the amount of hands you can check raise, or how often you can check raise in general. Okay, so now it's enough content for today, I think. I'm really proud of you that you went through all this, and if you are managing to get at the end of the video, I'm really happy. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think. Shoot me some feedback on our Discord about this update, about defending your big blind, check raising flops, and turn continues. I think personally now you have a good set of rules to, even if you don't have a solver solution or can't look into it, you can still make at least a good guess and basically be fine in every kind of situation. So yeah, see you guys around on our Discord, and until next time, bye bye.